It's easy to forget what real silence sounds like in an arena of 20,000 people. There's always a hum, a murmur, the shuffling of feet, the crinkle of a wrapper. Even in a lull, there's noise. And that's where we were. SmackDown was in its second hour, a standard, predictable match winding down. The champion was in the ring, her opponent on the mat. The crowd was polite, appreciative, but waiting. Waiting for the weekend. Waiting for a spark. And then the lights went out. A collective, sharp intake of breath. Not a scream, just a gasp. Blackness. And in that blackness, a single, agonizing second of pure, dead silence. Then, static. Just a hiss, a scratch, the kind of sound a speaker makes before it's been given a signal. And then, the first chord. A sound that hadn't been heard in these arenas for 451 days. It wasn't a song. It was a memory. It was a ghost story. For a full 3 seconds, the crowd didn't react. They were processing. They were denying. It couldn't be. The rumors were false. She was done. She was retired. She was gone. The Titantron flickered but stayed dark. And through the curtain, a silhouette, a shape, unmistakable. After months of silence, she finally walks back through that curtain, and the entire arena erupts. You have to see this comeback. It wasn't a cheer. It was a detonation. A single, deafening 20,000-person roar that wasn't joy, not yet. It was shock. It was relief. It was a pressure valve releasing a year's worth of rumor and heartbreak. The sound didn't peak and fall. It just stayed. A high, sustained shriek that you felt in your teeth. The hard camera began to shake. Grown men, faces painted, merchandise on, were instantly weeping. Strangers grabbed each other, pointing, shaking, asking, "Is this real?" The commentary team, they were silent. One of them had thrown his headset off, not in anger but in sheer, unprofessional disbelief. He was a fan again. They all were. And she just stood there, on the ramp, not moving. She didn't raise a hand. She didn't smile. She didn't pander. She just stood, bathed in the light, absorbing the noise. It was the ultimate power move. She wasn't asking for their approval. She was allowing them to react. In the ring, the champion, the woman who had carried the whole division on her back for the last year, just ceased to exist. She was a statue, a prop in a moment that had nothing to do with her. The matriarch, the icon, whatever they called her, she finally took a step, then another. The walk to the ring, usually 30 seconds, felt like an hour. Every step was a drumbeat. Every step was a promise. She climbed the stairs, stepped through the ropes, and stood face to face with the champion who held her title. She never took her eyes off her. The mic was in her hand. The world was waiting. And she just stood there. Silence. The show went to black. The second the feed cut, the gorilla position, the staging area just behind the curtain, was chaos. But not celebratory chaos. It was panic. "Who cleared this?" a producer screamed into his headset. "Is she cleared?" The architect, the man who runs the whole show, stared at the monitor, his face pale. He wasn't smiling. He was calculating. The ratings just exploded. His stock just went up. And he had just lost complete control of his own show. Then the champion, the usurper, burst through the curtain, her face a mask of crimson fury. This was her night. This was her segment. She had just been made to look like a fool, an afterthought in her own story. "What the hell was that?" she screamed, not at anyone, but at everyone. "You told me I was the main event." A road agent, a veteran of the game, tried to put a hand on her shoulder. "Kid, just calm down." She slapped his hand away. "Calm down? She's not even supposed to be in this building." And that was the truth. She wasn't. The matriarch had apparently walked in through a side door, past security who thought she was a guest and waited in the shadows. She hadn't gone to talent relations. She hadn't gone to the architect. She had just appeared. The eruption of the crowd was a celebration. The eruption backstage was a civil war. The matriarch hadn't just returned. She had staged a coup. Deeper in the building, the talent locker room was watching on a shared monitor. The reaction here was different. There was no cheering. When her music hit, the room went utterly, terrifyingly quiet. The veterans, the ones who had been in the ring with her, they just nodded. They understood. The game had just changed. The easy days were over. The younger talent, the rookies, the ones who had been clawing and scratching to fill the vacuum she'd left, their faces fell. You could see the hope drain out of them. The mountain they were climbing just got infinitely steeper. One of them, a promising starlet set for a major push, just got up and walked out, slamming the door. Her entire year-long storyline had just been rendered meaningless. The locker room leader, the warden, the one who kept the peace, just stared at the screen. She had worked for 5 years to earn the respect the matriarch had by default, and in one night, with one chord, her authority was gone. The whispers started instantly. I thought her contract was frozen. She's not healthy. There's no way. This ruins the big show. This ruins everything. In the arena, it was a comeback. In the locker room, it was an eviction notice. Everyone was now fighting for second place. The moment the show went off the air, the digital world fractured. It wasn't just a trend, it was the only trend. Her name, just her first name, was the #1 topic on Earth. Not wrestling, not SmackDown, just her. A phone screen, illuminated in a dark room. The notifications are piling up so fast, the text is just a blur. Every major sports network, every entertainment blog, every news aggregator, they all sent the same push alert. She's back. Videos, filmed on shaky phones from the nosebleeds, were already hitting billions of views. The audio is distorted, just a high-pitched scream, but the visual is clear. The silhouette, the walk, the confrontation. The narrative was already being written, and it was spinning in a dozen different directions. "The greatest comeback in sports history," one headline screamed. "Desperate company breaks glass in case of emergency," another sneered. "Was it a hologram?" one confused outlet asked. The machine was in full motion. Podcasters were going live from their cars. Critics were typing furious think pieces about what it meant. But it was all just noise. The truth of the moment was already buried. The reality was, nobody knew why. Nobody knew how. The company's carefully crafted PR machine was silent. They had no statement. They, too, were watching the wildfire from the sidelines, utterly powerless to control the inferno she had just lit with a single step. The architect, the man in the expensive suit, was forced to do a post-show press conference. The room was packed. Not with the usual wrestling media, but with real sports journalists, entertainment reporters, people who smelled blood in the water. The architect looked exhausted, but he wore his corporate smile. The first question, was this return planned, and if so, why was it kept from the champion? He deflected. We love surprises. Our goal is to create moments, and tonight we created a moment that will live forever. The second question, sharper. Is she medically cleared to compete? The last reports were that her injury was career-ending. He smiled, but his eyes were ice. Our talent's health is our #1 priority. We would never put anyone in a position they weren't cleared for. A perfect non-answer. The third question, from a reporter in the back. Can you confirm that she left the building before the show was even over? The smile faded. The room went quiet. The architect shuffled his papers. The matriarch operates on her own time. She made her statement. That was the real story. She had walked to the ring, stared down the champion, and as the show went to black, she'd rolled back out of the ring, walked up the ramp, and disappeared into a waiting car. She hadn't spoken to the champion. She hadn't spoken to the architect. She hadn't spoken to anyone. She had used a multi-million-dollar live television production as her own personal answering machine. The message, "I'm back." Click. 2 in the morning. The arena is a skeleton. The lights are out, save for the blue-white work lights high in the rafters. The crowd is gone. The trucks are loaded. All that's left is the smell of disinfectant and stale beer. A cleanup crew worker, music playing softly in his headphones, sweeps the floor of the entrance ramp. His broom hits something small. He stops, leans down, and picks it up. A small piece of black athletic tape, twisted and discarded, the kind a wrestler uses to tape their wrists. He looks at it, shrugs, and tosses it into the bin. The evidence of the earthquake, now just trash. Miles away, a car cruises down a dark, empty highway. The matriarch is driving. Her windows are down. The cool night air is rushing in, but it can't drown out the ringing in her ears. The roar. It's a sound she hadn't heard in so long. She'd forgotten how much it hurt. Her phone, on the passenger seat, is a frantic, vibrating brick of light. Her agent, her lawyer, her family, the architect. She ignores it. The adrenaline from the walk, from the confrontation, is gone. And in its place is the deep, familiar, sickening ache in her neck and back. The very pain that made her leave. She grips the steering wheel, her knuckles white. The comeback was the easy part. The again was the hard part. She arrives at a quiet, unassuming house in a suburb you've never heard of. The lights are on. She doesn't need her keys. The front door opens before she reaches it. Her partner stands in the doorway. Their face isn't angry. It isn't happy. It's just tired. They'd seen it. Not live. They weren't invited. They saw it on a social media clip just like everyone else. She walks past them into the kitchen. She opens the freezer, pulls out an industrial-sized ice pack, and slings it over her shoulder, wincing. "You said you were going for a drive," her partner says, their voice flat. "I did." "That wasn't a drive, Alara. That was... that." She leans against the counter, closes her eyes. "They needed me." "No," her partner says, walking over, their voice breaking. "They wanted you. We needed you. Here, healthy. You promised me. You promised me you were done with that." The matriarch opens her eyes. There are no tears. She's not a hero. She's not an icon. She's just a person who knows she's addicted to the one thing that is destroying her. "It's not done with me," she whispers. The silence in the house is heavier than the roar of the crowd. The comeback that saved the company had just broken her home. Again. The ripple effect was immediate. The next day, at company headquarters, the architect's office became a war room. The entire creative plan for the next 6 months, the massive, career-defining championship matches, the debuts, the culminating storylines, was shredded. A stack of scripts, 3 feet high, was thrown in the trash. The usurper, the champion, was called into a meeting. She was told her advertised main event at the next pay-per-view was now a mid-card match. Her face, which had been furious the night before, was now just blank. She had been collateral damage. Meanwhile, a young rookie, the prodigy, who had trained her whole life for this, was supposed to debut next week. She got a call from Talent Relations. Her debut was postponed. Indefinitely. There just wasn't room. Her spot on the show, her music, her story, it was all given to the matriarch. The company's stock, however, soared. Merchandise bearing her name sold out in 4 minutes. Ticket sales for the next 3 months doubled. From a business perspective, it was a masterpiece. The architect was a hero to the board of directors. But in the locker room, he was a traitor. The warden, the veteran leader, confronted him, warning him that he had broken the trust of the entire roster. He had proven that no one's hard work mattered. All that mattered was the past. The pop was the match. The fire was the consequence. But the real story, the real why, wasn't about the stock. It wasn't about the fans. It wasn't even about the championship. 1 week later, a closed, private training facility. The lights are dim. The ring is empty, except for 2 figures, the matriarch and the usurper, the champion. The usurper is pacing, furious. You humiliated me. You made me a joke. Why? Why would you do that? The matriarch is calm. She's stretching her neck. I watched your match last week, before I came out. I watched it from the shadows. So, the champion spits. So. It was quiet, the matriarch says, her voice dangerously soft. The crowd was sitting on their hands. You were doing your moves. You were hitting your spots. But it was quiet. You had them, and you were losing them. That's not true. The matriarch walks right up to her, their faces inches apart. That roar you heard, that noise, that is the standard. That is the expectation. I didn't come back for the title. I didn't come back for them. She taps the champion on the heart. I came back for you, because you're holding my spot, and you're not ready. You think the hard part is winning the belt? The hard part is mattering. That ovation wasn't a welcome home. It was a final exam, and you're failing. The twist wasn't the return. It was the reason. It wasn't a comeback. It was a lesson. The matriarch wasn't here to reclaim her glory. She was here to see if anyone else was worthy of it.